So it is one of the most common carcinomas of women in India, and previously it was the most common carcinoma, but now it is carcinoma of cervix and carcinoma of breast, they are almost at par. And as you know, cervical carcinoma arises from the cervix of the uterus, and it is associated with the high risk HPV strains, and it has some unique clinical features and staging management, and it also has a vaccine for prevention and precancerous diagnosis and screening as well. So no other very very small quantity of cancers have got this screening and prevention vaccines. So cervical carcinoma is one of them. So what is cervical cancer? It is a malignant tumor arising from the cervix, and it starts as the squamo-columnar junction of the cervix. It is also known as the transformation zone. As you all know that the cervix is divided anatomically into two parts, ectocervix and endocervix. The ectocervix is lined by squamous epithelial lining, and the endocervix is lined by columnar epithelium. So this squamo-columnar junction, this is the site of origin of the cervical carcinoma. So etiology, the main cause is HPV infection. Around 70% cases are related to HPV infection. Early sexual activity and having multiple sex partners, this is another common cause. Smoking along with HPV is another common cause. Immunosuppression like HIV, prolonged steroid use, transplant patient, another cause. It is commoner in low socioeconomic status, like breast cancer is commoner in high or middle income group status, but the cervical cancer is more common in low socioeconomic groups, and it is a rare condition called DES, exposure in utero. It is rare in DU exposure in utero. So the pathogenesis begins around infection with the high risk type of HPV. These are mainly type 16 and type 18. Human papilloma virus, type 16 and type 18, these are the most common types associated with cervical carcinoma. And the viral genome, this get integrated with the cervical with the squamous cells, and these virus have oncoproteins like E5, E6, E7. They disrupt the tumor suppressor pathways, and this cascade results in uncontrolled proliferation, genomic instability, and subsequently malignant transformation of the cells. So the stepwise pathogenesis. This pathogenesis is very important and it can come as a long question. So first of all, there is infection. There is infection with some high risk HPV strain like 16 and 18. So there is HPV infection. HPV enters the basal epithelial cells of the cervix via microabrasions. There is some microabrasions always going on in the cervix. So through these microabrasions, the HPV enters the basal epithelial cells. The virus then binds to, these are the ligands of the virus, heparan sulfate proteoglycans, and receptors like EGFR and alpha 6 beta 4 integrins. Then there is internalization of the HPV virus. It occurs via endocytosis, and the viral DNA is transported to the nucleus. And you all know that HPV is a DNA virus. Then after entrance into the cell, then the viral genomic activity begins. There are proteins like E1 and E2 proteins which initiate viral replication. And E2 protein and inactivation due to integration causes uncontrolled expression of the other proteins like E6 and E7s which are oncogenes. And there is episomal and integrated DNA. This episomal is transient infection and often cleared, but when it is integrated within the DNA, the infection persists and there is higher risk of malignancy. Next, the oncoproteins and their effects. E5 oncoprotein. The E5 oncoprotein is the first protein that comes into action. It enhances the EGFR signaling leading to proliferation of the cells. It inhibits cell differentiation. Like in cervix, we have 3 layers of cells in the ectocervix, like parabasal, then intermediate, then superficial. So as the cell matures, it becomes the superficial cells. So it inhibits this cell differentiation, and there is alteration of the endosomal pHs, and that causes immune evasion. The E6 protein, it binds to P53. P53 you all know is a tumor suppressor gene. It binds to P53 and prevents degradation, apoptosis, and promotes telomerase activation, leading to immortalization of the cells. E7 protein. E7 protein, it binds to RB protein and releases E2F transcription factors. This transcription factors takes the cell to cell cycle progression from G1 means gap 1, to the synthetic phase. So this drives the resting cell into cell cycle progression, and as a result of relentless division, there is genomic instability. So these are the 3 oncoproteins which act in carcinogenesis: E5 protein, E6 protein, and E7 protein. And then what are the host responses? Due to genomic instability, there is mutation and chromosomal abnormalities. Due to immune evasion, there is downregulation of the interferon pathways. And due to epigenetic changes, there is methylation of the viral and host genes. And accumulation of mutation causes progression. First, there is CIN1, cervical intraepithelial neoplasia 1, then 2, then 3, and from CIN3 to invasive carcinoma. This is the whole pathogenesis of cervical carcinoma. Then progression, there may be transient HPV infection which occurs in 90% of the cases, and it is cleared in 1 to 2 years. Persistent infection, if this infection persists for more than 2 years, there is increased risk of CIN and cancer increases. And frequency, CIN is 30% of CIN1 goes to carcinoma, and CIN2 and 3 40%, and in 77% it starts with carcinoma. So here is the human papilloma virus. Human papilloma virus is a DNA virus. You can see the picture, it's a DNA virus. It has a circular double-stranded DNA and is protected by a capsid protein. Here is the circular double-stranded DNA and the capsid protein. The DNA and the capsid protein. So what happens? This HPV infects the epithelial cells in the cervical mucosa. It infects, and this basal layer is infected first. This is the superficial layer, intermediate layer, and this is the basal layer. So this HPV virus, this infects the basal layer of the cell, basal cells of the cervical epithelium, and it gets integrated into the cell, into the DNA of the nucleus. This infected basal cell, this here there is integration of the viral DNA within the nucleus of the epithelial cell, and there is viral replication. And gradually from the basal layer it goes to the superficial layer. Around 90% of the infection they heal within 2 years, but if it continues and the risk factor remains, then within 10 to 30 years there will be the DNA integrated within the basal cell will turn into tumor cells and there will be invasive carcinoma. So this is how the HPV works. Now coming to the HPV proteins. First of all, E5, E6, E7. These three are the main proteins involved in HPV oncogenesis. So they avoid the immune destruction. E7, E6, they enable replicative immortality, means the cells go on replicating without any apoptosis or without any cell death. E6, E7 is also responsible for direct invasion and metastasis, tumor promotion and inflammation. E7 and E6 also for genomic instability and mutation. E7 is responsible for angiogenesis. Angiogenesis is needed for the tumor growth and also for metastasis. E6, it resists cell death, means there is uncontrolled proliferation and no apoptosis or cell death. E6, E7, they also deregulate the cellular energetics, and all the E5, E6, E7, they sustain proliferative signaling and evade the growth suppressor agent like P53, anti-apoptotic genes. So this is how the HPV oncogenesis occurs. Next, what is the gross feature of a cervical carcinoma? If a specimen is given, how will you identify? The site, it usually arises at the squamo-columnar junction or the transformation zone. The appearance will be, it may be an exophytic growth, that is a fungating cauliflower-like mass protruding into the vagina. Or it may be an endophytic growth, then you will see an ulcerative infiltrative lesion and it will burrow into the cervical stroma. It will not come out like a cauliflower, instead it will grow inside the cervical stroma. And mixed type will be a combination of both exophytic and endophytic growth. In advanced disease, the cervix will become irregular, hard, barrel-shaped due to stromal invasion. And there is a rare but aggressive variant, small cell carcinoma of cervix. We don't think we have a slide of this cannot be shown, but when in the specimen usually will given this exophytic growth. You can see that fungating cauliflower-like growth. So this is how the normal cervix looks. This is the CIN intraepithelial neoplasia. This is also the precancerous condition, intraepithelial neoplasia. Look, these white parts and this reddish part, these are all intraepithelial neoplasia. And this is the actual invasive carcinoma. You can see the mass protruding. This is the whole thing is the mass. This red one is the external os and this whole thing is the mass. This cauliflower-like mass, this is protruding through the external os of the cervix. Then what are the microscopical features? So most common type of carcinoma of cervix is squamous cell carcinoma. It is 80 to 90% of the cervical carcinomas are squamous cell carcinomas. Squamous cell carcinomas may be of two types, keratinizing and non-keratinizing. In the keratinizing type, you will find nests of malignant cells. You will find these keratin pearls. As you have read in all squamous cells all everywhere, when it is differentiated keratinizing type, you will get these keratin pearls. And intercellular bridges will be prominent. Means the barrier between the two cells, these intercellular bridges will become very prominent. In the non-keratinizing type, there will be sheets of atypical squamous cells, but you won't find any keratin pearls, and there is high NC ratio, pleomorphism, and mitosis will be more than this keratinizing type. 10 to 15% of the cervical carcinoma are adenocarcinomas. They are malignant gland cells forming irregular glands, and they often arise from the endocervical canal. And this is often associated with HPV 18. Other rare types are there like small cell neuroendocrine carcinoma, clear cell carcinoma. This clear cell carcinoma is linked to DES exposure, diethyl stilbestrone exposure. So this is the microscopic picture. So these are the cells. This is the keratin pearl. This pink area. This is the keratin pearls. So this is a squamous cell carcinoma. These are the malignant cells. They are lying in nests. See the nest-like patterns, and these are the keratin pearls. These pink things are the keratin pearls. So this is a squamous cell carcinoma, and this is an adenocarcinoma of the cervix. You can see the malignant glands. These gland things are malignant. You can see the squamous lining. The squamous lining is very much intact, but these glandular cells, these cells are forming malignant glands. This is adenocarcinoma of the cervix. So, like it is a representational picture. This is the normal histology of the cervix. This is normal cervix. This is CIN1, mild to very mild dysplasia, CIN1 and condyloma. This is the microscopic picture of CIN1. See, the basement membrane is intact. And this is the microinvasive carcinoma, grade 2, CIN2 and CIN3. Here also, you can see the loss of polarity and the ugly cells, but the basement membrane is still intact. The CIN2 and CIN3. And when from CIN3, when this when these carcinoma cells invade the basement membrane, then this picture is found. This is the full-on malignant tumor of the cervix. So these are the histological pictures. Now the WHO classification. As for WHO 2020, there has been modifications after that also. But I am telling you the 2020 classification. This is easier to remember. So squamous cell tumors have been divided into HPV associated squamous cell carcinoma, HPV independent squamous cell carcinoma, and squamous cell carcinoma NOS. So HPV associated is the most common type and arises from squamous intraepithelial lesion. So if it is HPV associated, there will be CIN1, CIN2, CIN3 and then invasive carcinoma. This thing will follow. And in HPV independent squamous cell carcinoma, this is more aggressive than this HPV associated squamous cell carcinoma, and it is not linked to any HPV infection. And this cervical carcinoma NOS. Glandular tumor, adenocarcinoma in situ, this is also HPV associated. Adenocarcinoma, this is HPV associated, usual type and stratified mucin producing type. Adenocarcinoma in situ, HPV independent, and adenocarcinoma HPV independent. In this adenocarcinoma HPV independent, you will find gastric type of adenocarcinoma. It is the most frequent variant of HPV independent adenocarcinoma. Then clear cell type, mesonephric type. Other rare types of tumors are there. Small cell carcinoma, that is, it is of neuroendocrine origin. serous carcinoma and mixed carcinoma. Mixed carcinoma means this shows the feature of more than one type of carcinoma. So this is more or less the shortened and simplified WHO classification of cervical tumors. Now, what are the clinical features? How will you diagnose a patient? In the early stage, the patient is absolutely symptomless. Patient is absolutely symptomless. You just do a routine screening pap smear and you will find the malignant cells in the pap smear. And then when the symptom begins, the most common symptom is postcoital bleed. This is the most common symptom. Then comes intermenstrual or postmenopausal bleeding. And when this progresses, it will become a foul-smelling, watery, blood-stained vaginal discharge that will continue. And then there will be pelvic pain and dyspareunia. In advanced disease, there is urinary obstruction due to invasion of the bladder and the ureter. There will be rectal bleeding due to invasion of the rectal wall, and there will be leg edema due to blockage of the lymphatic by the malignant cells. Now, diagnosis. Diagnosis, pap smear. I told you pap smear is used for screening as well as diagnosis. Even before the cancer has started, you can see a pap smear and you can say that there are abnormal cells. Most probably this patient can have a cervical cancer, so you can take the precautions. Then HPV DNA testing. Then if pap smear is suspicious, then you have to go for a colposcopy and biopsy, and this is the gold standard. A biopsy is always gold standard. And then for the detecting the spread of the disease and staging, you have to do an imaging, either CT or MRI. This is done for staging of the carcinoma. So if it is asked that if you suspect a case of carcinoma cervix, what is the first test you will do? The first test you will do is a pap smear. And what is the gold standard test? The gold standard test is colposcopy with biopsy. Biopsy is always the gold standard test. And what is the protocol of screening? First of all is pap smear. You collect the cervical cells to detect the precancerous changes, and it is recommended every 3 years for women aged 21 to 29. Then HPV DNA test. It is done to detect the high risk HPV strains like 16 and 18, and it is recommended every 5 years for women aged 30 to 65. 21 to 29 you can go with pap smear every 3 years, but 30 to 65 in this age group you have to do a HPV DNA testing in addition to a pap smear. And there is combination of HPV DNA test plus pap smear. This is recommended for this age group, and it is recommended for every 5 years for women aged 30 to 65 years. So for 21 to 29 years, it is only pap smear. For 30 to 65 years, it is the double approach, pap smear plus HPV DNA testing done every 5 years. So this is the screening guidelines. 21 to 29 pap smear only, interval 3 years. 30 to 65 HPV DNA or pap smear with HPV DNA, and it is done every 5 years. And more than 65 years, if all these tests become negative, from 21 to 65 years, if all the tests are negative, then after 65 years you can stop doing the screening tests. Now staging. You don't have to know about the HSCC staining, HSCC staging and all those, or the CAP protocol of reporting. You don't have to know all these things. You just know the FIGO staging. FIGO staging, stage 1, this is the normal cervix, this is the normal os. This is stage 1. Stage 1 is, that is carcinoma confined to the cervix. This is the stage 1. Stage 2 is the tumor extends beyond the cervix but not to the pelvic wall or lower vagina. Means this is the stage 2. The carcinoma is here. It extends beyond the cervix, it is going towards the endometrium, but it has not involved the vagina or the pelvic structures. And the stage 3 is it invades the pelvic wall, lower vagina, or causes hydronephrosis. This is the stage 3. See, it has involved the vagina, it has involved the upper uterus, and it may cause hydronephrosis also. And the stage 4 is spread to the bladder, rectum, or distal metastasis. So there will be bloodborne metastasis, and the metastasis, commonest site of metastasis are lungs, intestines, bladder, rectum, and other organs, bones. So this is stage 4. This is the FIGO staging. The FIGO staging is very simple. Now the routes of spread. How does a cervical carcinoma spread? So there is local spread, lymphatic spread, and hematogenous spread. Local spread, it occurs, direct extension occurs. It occurs into the uterus, endometrium and myometrium, vagina, especially upper 1/3 of the vagina, parametrium, that is the pelvic wall, and direct spread to the vaginal and rectum that occurs in the advanced disease. Lymphatic spreads. So you have to know the lymphatic drainage of the cervix. The cervix are drained by the primary lymph nodes, that are the paracervical lymph nodes, obturator lymph nodes, and internal iliac lymph nodes. So lymphatic spreads will first involve these lymph nodes, and from these lymph nodes it will extend to the secondary lymph nodes, that is these lymph nodes drain into these lymph nodes, external iliac lymph nodes, common iliac lymph nodes, and in the advanced stage the para-aortic lymph nodes. So first of all these lymph nodes will be involved, and then these secondary nodes will be involved. And hematogenous spread, it occurs late in the disease, and the most common site of metastasis are lungs, liver, and bones. Lungs and livers are the common site of metastasis in any kind of carcinoma, and bones mostly in vertebra and pelvis. So local spread, lymphatic spread to primary lymph nodes and then to secondary lymph nodes, and lastly hematogenous spread or distant metastasis, lungs, livers, bone. So here is the photograph of the metastasis. This is the normal cervix. This is stage 0, confined to the cervix. Stage 1, moving outside the cervix. Then stage 2, moving into the pelvis. Then stage 3, moving into the pelvis but has not moved outside the pelvis. And then there is stage 4, that is metastasis. Liver, lungs, bones, intestines. So this is how cervical cancer metastasizes. Now what are the management? In the pre-invasive stage, you can do cone biopsy or laser guided ablation. In the early invasive stage, you can go for a radical hysterectomy with or without pelvic lymphadenectomy. In locally advanced disease, with this radical hysterectomy, pelvic lymphadenectomy, you can add chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And in the metastatic disease where the tumor has already metastasized to liver and lungs and bones, you have to give palliative chemotherapy or targeted therapy or immunotherapy.